Hello and good evening. My name is Ann Edwards, and this is the Ann Edwards. It means. And tonight I have two really interesting guests with me. I have Angie Zinck. She's a communications manager with 211, and I have to give a shout out to her 211 team. When I was homeless, and I really didn't have a lot of help other than 211 or maybe really no one. And the 211 team listened to me. I talked to them. I told them, one day I'm going to get a show and I'm going to do something on mental health to help people with mental illness. And I'm going to tell you guys, and you guys are going to come on my show. And here we are. She's here tonight, and that's Angie Zinck, the communications manager for 211. Shout out to her. And also Liam O'Rourke. He's with Lake City, and they help people with mental health and illnesses transition back into work. He'll be able to tell you a little bit more about that. But what I wanted to do was a shout out to his organization too, because when I moved into my new home on April 3rd, which is my birthday, guess how old I am? I'm just kidding. Anyway, when I moved into my new home on April 3rd, I needed a laptop. So I got a hold of Mr. Liam, and he gave me a laptop, and now I'm able to do my show. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. You have a great organization, and I welcome you both to the Ann Edwards Show.
Hi, Ann.
Hi there. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Okay, so what we're going to tackle this evening is we're going to have a common sense approach to resources that are available in our province that we may not know how to access. And if we access them, what happens then? Does that person actually get that call when they called up and they're going to commit suicide? And they said, well, on the other line, well, we'll have somebody help you in 3 months. Well, I'm suicidal now. I can't wait 3 months. So where do you bridge the gap between somebody doing that and somebody needing a resource? Angie.
Yeah, so our team of navigators, which you speak of very highly, and I will, be sure to pass along those kind words. But
thank you.
They are really trained into knowing, what is an immediate mental health crisis, or what is a somebody that is agitated or stressed because a life challenge or a life situation, and we can help them and help them get them to the right resource. So sometimes that is walking somebody through and saying, okay, you need help with food support, or you need help with perhaps paying your power bill. All of these real life challenges that Scotians are facing. And they're facing them in the best of times, not just during COVID, of course. And then there are those cases that our navigators do have to make that immediate transfer to the mental health support, to the mobile crisis unit, and we do make those transfers. We do talk to Nova Scotians who are in crisis, and we have to make those calls and then and get them those supports that they need. So lots of times it's a mix. It's a mix of things. People who are in mental health crisis, and then get the help they need. We hope they call back once they see the medical, and the health professionals, and then because we can help them. Perhaps there are some life challenges that will help. We can help them and alleviate some of those stressors.
I guess my point is there a follow-up? Okay. Like, I've gone through your resource and then is there any mechanism in place to check on that particular individual to make sure that they did get the help and that they're continuing to get the help and they're getting the support that they need on a continuous basis, not just a Band-Aid to get them off the system?
Yeah, so we do follow-ups where we would certainly if it becomes a health issue, if it becomes like a and I mean in terms of when you need a medical professional, that becomes an issue of confidentiality and privacy. But for lots of those cases, for lots of Nova Scotians, I hear the navigators all the time saying, would it be okay if I follow up in a couple days?
Oh, that's great.
And just make sure, I think we can, and I think you touched on this. We want to make sure that for lots of people who call 211, they are looking for that, just what number they need to call. They're looking for that next step. But there are some folks that
Right.
the best they could muster that day was that first call to 211. So we may actually do transfer them right to the resource and say, hey, Joe,
Okay.
I have Sally on the line and she needs help with X. So sometimes it's just really, how do we help Nova Scotians navigate the entire length of that journey, of the challenge that they have?
And how do you?
Walking them through it. So like I said, so sometimes it is a transferring them and helping them all the way through. And then other times you do know you have full confidence. You've had a really good chat, and you know that they've gotten the numbers and the names that they need for the next step, and they have the ability to make the next call. So there's some encouragement around that too.
Excellent, thank you, Liam. I'm going to bring you in here. Could you explain your role and how it has changed because of the since March 11th?
Yeah, certainly. Well, myself personally, I'm the executive director of an organization in Dartmouth called Lake City Works. And historically, we provide employment services to individuals living with mental illness. And those employment services can sort of range from folks looking to build the confidence and get back on their feet to be ready to look for employment, to those that are quite ready to be looking for employment, and we're supporting them on building a resume or practicing interview skills and whatnot. But since the onset of COVID, which came on quite quickly, we've really pivoted all of our services, I guess, onto an online platform. And I mean, right off the bat, the first thing that was a major concern to us was, we support on site at Lake City. I believe it was 68 clients just prior to COVID coming on.
That's great.
Of those 68 clients, a number of those folks are living not in a supported living environment. So these are folks that do need an additional level of support that we were able to provide to them on a day-to-day basis by providing programming at Lake City. I guess when things really started to ramp up in Nova Scotia, the first step that we took was just making sure that anybody that was particularly at risk to have, serious ramifications was put off of work or put off from coming to programming. And then we just started doing everything we could to start trying to plug the holes that we knew existed for those folks moving forward. So that included, we hired a psychotherapist that was able to provide direct support to our clients. And there's one of our clients commenting right now. Hi, Corey.
Hey, there you go, Corey. Thanks, Corey.
Made me lose my train of thought, though.
Oh, sorry.
The support that the clients need is, I guess, what I was talking about while they're at home without the Lake City community. So one of the things that we identified really early on was like the mental health support that we provide on a daily basis. I mean, we're not a healthcare organization, but I mean, obviously, lake counseling is a big part of what we do. So making sure that we had a staff team that was ready and on the phone to chat with all of our clients on a daily basis. So we've been doing that for the last, I guess, almost 4 months now. Daily check-ins with clients, not every day for every client, but for those that need it. And then we engaged a psychotherapist to help clients that are a little bit experiencing more anxiety or distress from the crisis. And then as well to provide support to our frontline staff. This is stressful enough. And when your day-to-day is working people through, I'm sure it's something that 201 sees all the time. And then, the other things are just like the obvious pieces of people that are living on the margins. We started delivering food packages. So that started, I think it was 28 people. So we've been delivering weekly care packages. We've had some great support from folks like the United Way. Sobeys delivered actually like an entire tractor trailer load of food to Lake City.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
Yeah, and then I mean, our staff team has just been fantastic in pulling together and like recognizing what needed to happen for our clients
Sure,
specifically, and then
sure.
working with other great organizations around North Dartmouth specifically, and then within the mental health community and HRM as well. And then I guess sort of the final project, and Anne, I guess it sounds like you were a recipient of that,
I
sort of
was.
getting people connected. Um,
Amen.
so I mean, I can't take credit for that. We've got a client-run micro enterprise. It's called Reboot, where we take donations of, I guess, laptops and desktops and things like that that some people deem that are past their working life, and where possible, we'll turn those back into computers that we can. We don't always give them away. A lot of times we do sell them back to the community, but I don't think we've ever sold a computer for more than $120. So
That's
it's as accessible
amazing.
as we
Thank
can make
you.
it. And yeah, now we're working on trying to make sure people are connected to the internet. So I mean, our fingers are
Do you
certainly
have any
crossed.
partners for that, Liam? Any partners that's
Well, we've
lined up?
received some funding from the mental health. I always get this wrong. The Nova Scotia Mental Health Foundation to
Okay.
supply some webcams actually directly to some of our clients, because lots of folks have computers, but not everyone has a laptop with a camera on it. Um,
Exactly.
the United Way has been providing us some funding to purchase parts for some of the decommissioned computers that we have to get those up and running, to give those back to the community. And the United Way as well is, well, we haven't heard back, but they've been incredibly supportive thus far. So our fingers are crossed that they'll continue to support us into the future to try and get our clients specifically online. So if this does turn into an extended period of time where they're away, we can at least ensure that they have access to information, because the world's changed.
Exactly.
You know, the internet really is how information is disseminated, and
Yes.
it shouldn't be something that people have to want for to get access to information. It should be a given.
Um, I have bipolar and personality disorder. So when I'm looking for resources, I'm looking in particular for like something that would deal with those particular illnesses. And this is addressed to both of you. And there's two parts. The first part, Angie, is that what resources do you know that would be available for somebody that doesn't have a family doctor, that tries to get a family doctor, and they will not let me have a family doctor because I either have too much documentation or I get so upset that I can't even talk to them, and then they hang up on me, and then the doctor is told by the receptionist, she was rude, you can't have a doctor. So my question to you is, what resources do you know for people that do have particular struggles? And then the second part is, how do you help somebody that has a history of getting a job, losing a job, getting a job, losing a job? Did I say getting a job? Getting a job, losing a job, to be able to maintain permanent employment when they've struggled with it for, as myself, for 22 years.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I think you touched on something you said really sparked something. One of the things that that our team does really well, and you know, I think has been quite helpful, is when our folks call, particularly during COVID, when folks would call, the navigators would make sure that that callers knew on their next call, this is what you're going to need. So if you're calling for, here's where when you call a family doctor, here's what you're going to go on the 811 list.
okay.
Here's what they're going to ask of you, and or here's what you need. Or particularly when people have to call any government line. I mean, I won't name
Thank you, Linda.
names, but you know, those you're on hold for a long time, and you may finally
Yeah.
get an operator, and it sounds silly, but you may have not realized you needed your social insurance number, and then you're kicked off the queue, and you have to start again, and that causes such a frustration. And I think lots of times, whether when it's looking for support, if those are health supports or if those are employment supports, the more frustrated and the more agitated folks get, I think people are more apt to just kind of throw up their hands and say, this isn't working for me, or I can't do this. And when people have those feelings, and we've all felt that, frustration just builds upon that.
Yeah.
So one of the things we did really early, and it was really successful, was and I probably won't remember it now, but it was before you applied for CERB, for the emergency benefit. There were things you had to do. So you had to, it was simple really, but you had to check that that your bank account could accept a direct deposit, and you had that set up, and you had to set up like a Service Canada account. We posted that, just those two simple steps. And we had a lot of great feedback about that. People who wouldn't have necessarily thought about direct deposit. But helping people go through the entire, go through the steps of what they're going to need, so that by the time they get to the front of the queue, they have what they need, documentation they need, and they're prepared. And I think another thing too, and maybe Liam, you touched on it, access to internet really became, I think it's something that we've all known, certainly in 2020, that the world is moving online, but it certainly did it at a rapid pace. One of the things that part of my job is to really dig into our website, who's using it, when they're using it, and we can see that people are using our websites from mobile devices. So that means they're out on the road, particularly now that a lot of the restrictions are lifted, and they're looking for those services. So was really happy to see today the libraries and their plan to come back on board. I think that's going to help. Those simple
that connection.
But those simple little things that you can go to a place where you have adequate internet access, and whether that's Wi-Fi or whether that's an actual computer, having those supports back online, I think is really going to help. And we're going to see that reconnecting to our communities is going to look very differently for all of us. But we need to, what are the ways that we can usher that reconnection in a safe way, but in a way that really lets people start getting back, in their communities and really functioning again.
And feeling safe.
And feeling safe. And, and I think it is about having open conversations. I'm really excited to see conversations around folks who, for any host of reasons, may not feel comfortable in a mask. What are the other options for them? How can we have open dialogue, realizing at the end what we really want is a safe country, is a safe province, and we all share that goal. So let's get there and realize that we all have different, we all have different impacts, we all have different experiences, we all have different, limitations. And so how do we get there? I mean, she wouldn't mind me saying, my mom really struggles, and that's a lot of old junk, but she really struggles with the mask in that restrictive. So she opts to wear a shield when she has to. When she's reached out and volunteered to kind of do a bulk order for some other friends. But let's have that conversation out loud and see what we can do to help each other reintegrate back in the community safely.
Just one point, Linda McIsaac Taylor. Good evening. She has a concern. Her son has no doctor, and he has bipolar, and she's concerned that this needs to be addressed. How could we help her right now?
We just want to make sure that she is. My recommendation would make sure she is on that 811 list, so that there is a record of her and her family and her son looking for a doctor. Although they can't, and although they, it's not that they can help you find a doctor. I would make sure that her MLA, her member of the House at the provincial level is also aware that she's looking for that, and that's not that's not taking an aggressive stance. I think that's just important that the people that the people who help dole out those health dollars really know the state of their community. And the other thing too is I really have seen this, like if she can, if maybe she has done that, but reach out, and I think the more You can connect with other groups, with other mental health advocates, other family advocates. You really start to see a real sense of community. And I think we really saw that during COVID. Communities really taking care of their own. I hope that if there's a chance for her, she can reach out to to a community support group, a parent support group in her community. And you may just see a mom and dad down the road have found an answer that she needs.
Yes. I'll get the next question to Liam from Joanne Jenkins. Unfortunately, she's struggling with PSTD, wants to either go to university or work. How could we navigate her to make sure that she makes the right choices at the right time?
I know a program like Lake City, one of the big outcomes that we look for is folks accessing education. So looking to get started at university is something that we've helped countless people on their quest towards. I know we have some programming specifically catered towards folks living with PTSD. We're actually running it's a therapeutic woodworking programs for that demographic that started up a couple of years ago. We're not actively tracking, I guess, the impact of that program, but those would be two things that are available. I guess that would be a very Lake City centric answer. But I guess that's what I'm on here to talk about. Other services, that would be the best answer I would have for that.
That would be the best answer. Okay.
Or to call 211 if Lake City can't answer your question.
I
did want to add.
If I may, I think Joanne's question is a great one.
It is a good one. Yeah.
I think it's a really good chance to chat about stacking resources and stacking help on top of one another. So. We really see, and I realize we just saw her question really quickly. It's like PTSD and then university or community college. So sort of this is the issue and this is the goal. But there's a lot of steps in between that. So as you said, and talking through that with 211, maybe a matter of every university student needs a laptop. So let's look at where are the resources we could get her a laptop. So we're going to call Liam and we're going to see if he has any of the, those computers, refurbished computers. And then we're going to look at, is a service dog part of her journey. And so let's look at that. It's really looking at somebody's challenge and breaking it down and looking at sort of the entire spectrum of the challenge and not just trying to fix one thing. And I found that in my time here at 211, most of the time, the thing that people call about isn't just the only challenge. There's lots of other things that we can work on. I'll give another real life example, and I'll certainly save their privacy. But we had in the middle, just before COVID start, we had a Nova Scotian call us, and they had looking for food support. And the reason why they had no money to afford food at the time was, going into COVID, they decided they wanted to pay off. They had a balance on their power bill, and they didn't want to start off with a massive power bill. So they took all the money out of their account and paid their high power bill, and paid that off. And then there was no money left for food support. It was one of these examples that had they been able to call us, had they just called us just before they did that, we could have actually done it in reverse. We could have said, well, going into COVID, Nova Scotia Power has this, they are giving Nova Scotians a break on this. So plus there's other heat support or there's good neighbor fund. Let's work on that. Work through this entire process. So I always try to tell people that if 211 can be top of mind, sort of before you're at that crisis point, there's lots of services we can do, and we can. We don't actually do them, of course. We rely on good folks like Liam and Lake City. But how do we top up all of these resources that are available, build on top of each other, and actually help people, sort of cherry picking from all the great programs.
Yeah, I think what I found when I was, trying to navigate the system living in a car, that, I didn't have a fixed address, therefore I didn't qualify for social assistance.
Mhm.
And it was just a nightmare to get any help. I mean, I was dealing with two mental illnesses as well as people that really don't have any common sense.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
what do you want me to do? Like, well, what are you going to do? And it's like, well, I'm calling you for help. And so I want to talk about triggers. You must have situations, both of you, in the workplace where you get a call or you see somebody and they're, for some reason, they're triggered. How do you deflate, or how do you navigate when they're going into that state, and how to come out of it so that everybody's okay and doesn't get tasered by the police and killed?
Um, I mean, that's a big question. I think um, I did. There was the part early on in your question there where you're talking about your own personal situation, and I think
Mhm.
it was just really. I was going to say triggering something in my brain. Just you were talking about that access to housing, and I think
Yeah.
I know from a Lake City perspective, if people have triggers or um, uh, there's always going to be things that can push people push
Hmm.
people's mental health negatively. But I think the best thing that we can do as an organization or as a society is just trying to provide the best baseline support for individuals across the board. I know. I mean, we've talked about access, like how contacting 211 or contacting to Lake City to get access to resources that are out there. The reality of it is that resources that are available to folks living with mental illness, they're lacking. We need more psychiatrists. We need more family doctors. We need more support for individuals living with mental illness. And
Hmm.
to jump on what you had said, Anne, one of the biggest barriers that we see for our clients just living their best life is uh, access to affordable housing, access to housing, period. Like we're seeing, I mean, we're specifically located in North End Dartmouth, which historically has been, I guess, a low income area. And there
Right.
was historically some affordable housing around, but we're seeing a really, really sharp and drastic change in what's available in terms of housing stock in that
Yes.
community. And it's incredibly scary. Like we've had tens of clients, and we're a small organization that have
Mm.
been evicted out of apartment buildings that they've been in for years and years and years. And I know, like, our small part, we started the tiny home lottery a couple of years ago to try and start raising some awareness around that. We're pivoting that project this year to start building a prototype. I mean, a potential affordable home that would be tiny home like, I guess. It's really in its
Okay.
infancy phase, but not to like completely be a politician and move totally away from your. I have nothing against politicians, by the way, but to move away from your question, I just wanted to. I think the best thing that we can do to support uh, our that community is to try and raise the bar of what support is available to folks on a day-to-day basis, and that's going to make those crisis situations a heck of a lot easier. And
What
it's going to
about what
make
we'll tolerate, Liam? I mean, how much do we have to tolerate? I mean, the housing levels in 2013, they had 256 rooming houses. Now there's 17. Like,
yep.
there's nowhere for these people to go because the rents are too high, and the social assistance is what, 1989 still, and then we did get a little bit of an increase, but it was taken because of inflation.
Yeah, I wish I had an answer for that. I don't. All I can say is that it's front of mind for our organization to try. I
Yeah,
mean,
good.
I think what people think of Lake City, I mean, we have a robust employment service department that's been around since the mid 80s. Our social enterprises, some of them have been around since longer than that. Um, I think people know us for being an enterprising, charitable organization that
Yeah.
does really great stuff with the folks that we support. Um, I mean, we haven't started any projects other than this affordable housing piece on the tiny home, but I can
Okay.
say with certainty that it's definitely on the radar of myself and my board of directors. Yeah, I don't know what we can do, but we can certainly put the brain power that we have and the energy that we have and the heart that we have to trying to help solve that problem. It's not going to be a one-person solution, though, that's for sure.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's for sure. I guess when I was homeless, I felt that I was being criminalized because I was in poverty. I was being profiled by the police. One minute I had 2 tickets, then I had 9 tickets. I had to go to court and plead with the judge that I didn't pay $965. So advocacy is very important when you are in a situation where, you've got an eviction notice and you got to leave in 15 days, and you've got a baby and you've got an abusive partner, and there's so many different scenarios that we could walk through. But what I wanted to talk about now was Centric mental health, because of what's going on now. I would like for you to both address that.
Yeah, so we I mean, certainly that how 211 works, it works, but we don't ask any of those identifying questions. So
Okay.
When callers call, when folks call in, when Nova Scotians call in, and if they want to self-identify, in the range of things that you can self-identify, then certainly that we may tailor what the resources that we provide for
Right.
to who necessarily self-identify. But really what we try to do is that it's like I said, it's really just being there to help people with the issues that that they're facing. Early on in COVID, I did see the Association of Black Social Workers put together a hotline and a helpline, and I reached out right away and said, what can we do to help? What data do you need? What can we do? What numbers? Here's how you navigate our website. And I really wanted to open that dialogue and see how that association we're dealing with some real challenges in the African Nova Scotian community. So, and it was right around the time that the Prestons were certainly dealing with a lot of COVID health crisis. So I just really wanted to reach out and say, here's the data that we've already collected. It won't, may not necessarily be flagged with these are services directly for Black Nova Scotians and for African Nova Scotian families. But I certainly wanted to keep that dialogue going, and I think that's an important step, certainly for first helplines like ours. How do we take all this information that we've already collected and that we were doing a massive amount of work to keep updated in light of COVID? How do we do that and say to community leaders, and whether those are Indigenous leaders, whether those are LGBTQ leaders, or whether those are Black leaders, how do we say to these folks, here's our information, how do we work together, and how do we make sure we just get the information in the hands of Nova Scotians who need it?
Bang on. I agree with you.
One of the other things too, and maybe Liam will feel this too, is one of the things we really try to just keep remembering is that for lots of the people that, for lots of the folks that call us, March 13th may be the unofficial start of COVID, but there were some real challenges in this province, before. And so we really have tried to be informative about all of the programs that are around COVID and all of the things that, the isolation and the restrictions, all of those real impacts, but also recognize that there are lots of Nova Scotians who, March 12th was just as hard for them as March 13th. And so we really need to make sure that we're not forgetting those folks, and we're not just sort of lumping them in and saying like that this is all COVID related. Many Nova Scotians had struggles and real challenges long before this health crisis. And so it's kind of wearing two hats. It's recognizing that we have lots of new people on board, facing, people facing stresses and mental health issues that perhaps they never faced before. But we also have people with who have been struggling for a long time, and we need to pay attention to sort of both of those groups of folks. I think so, anyway.
Liam?
Can you remind me what the question was?
No, I can't.
Then I'll take my best stab at it.
No, the question was Afric-centric mental health. What are you seeing with what's been going on, in the news and in our province and in our country and just overall, just sort of the Coles Notes version of how we can navigate this. To the key here, I think, is communication. If we better communicate what we do and what we have to those that need it, we'd be better able to serve them. Because even when I was phoning around, some people, well, I don't know what they do, and they do this and they do that. They really didn't know. So how are they able to help somebody if they really don't? Like, for instance, I'll use, I had a housing person at Elizabeth Fry, and she said, I can go to Absent House and access them for a housing person. She couldn't do it anymore. She just couldn't do it. So I phoned them up and they said, well, Anne, you can't access our resources unless you're staying at the shelter. And I said, well, I was told that, you could help me. And she goes, no. And it's just one bump. But when you're homeless and you're looking for help and you get the wrong information, and then, well, what would you do? And then the triggers again. So what I'm trying to say is that if somebody is in crisis and they're reaching out to anyone, there's a reason, and it has to be taken seriously. If they say, I'm suicidal, we don't know. What's the breakdown? Do you have a plan? Blah, 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 blah. But it's not happening on the front lines, the people that are answering the telephones, and then the intervention. People that are in crisis can't wait three months to get help. It's immediate. So we need some kind of system where we do immediate response, and then we check in with them, and then we follow up. So that not only are we making sure that they're out of danger, they stay out of danger.
I think you're spot on, Anne. That we need that, and we don't have it. That's the truth.
And it scares me because I lost 3 friends to suicide in the last few months, and I could have been tasered. They put me in handcuffs at the library because the Chronicle Herald said I threatened to jump off a bridge. Well, you know how you say, oh, I'm going to jump off a bridge. It's a colloquial saying. I was just saying that. They phoned the police. Next thing I know, I still can't use my wrist a year later because they handcuffed me so tightly. I pleaded with them and cried, and they wouldn't take it off. And I was like embarrassed to be arrested at my library for no reason. I didn't say that. And I said, well, can I please tell my side of the story? And they said, no, you're mentally ill. We're going to take you to the NS. So I said, so you're a doctor now. You're my psychiatrist. I said, you're not my psychiatrist, so you can't put me in the NS. Oh, yes, I can. I said, no, you can't. See, the problem with the police is they don't know what they're doing. They are not mental health professionals. They're police officers. There's a big difference. And they should be going on ride-alongs with the police as healthcare officers. And, they should be called before the police intervene, because it's not going very well, is it?
It's certainly not. I agree 100% with you, Anne. There's like major systemic change or problems that just need to be addressed. The only, I hate to be too downer, but I think the only positive that I see right now is that at least the discussions are starting around the lack of crisis support related to mental health problems. It's been there for a long time. Like, I started working in this field broadly. How old am I? It was about 18 years ago. And I worked with the Canadian Mental Health Association, Halifax Dartmouth branch as a summer student. One of the clients that I actually supported during my time there was, I mean, he was one of the first individuals that was killed by police in Nova Scotia. His name was Howard Bai, and he was killed by a taser. And it was quite some time ago. I wasn't living in the province when that happened, but I remember being really shooken by that. And that was quite a while ago, and it's still happening. And Linda Taylor, who's been commenting a fair bit tonight, she said earlier, she doesn't like to bash the police, and I agree. I think a lot of police officers do a really good job, and I think the reality of it is that mental health is becoming a bigger and bigger issue in our society, and without more resources being devoted towards it, we just can't provide the solutions. So I think that's the answer. And to get back to your original sort of question there around Afrocentric mental health, I'm not an authority on the topic, but all I can say is that I can imagine that the access to services is probably worse than a lot of folks in Nova Scotia are having access to, and that must be incredibly difficult to deal with. I know the North End community that we support is a fairly diverse neighborhood, and in that the community that we specifically support, I mean, it's just across the board that this is a difficult time, and I think, Angie, you pointed it out that this was a difficult time on March 12th, not just March 13th. I think, the silver lining of a crisis like this, and I don't even know if it's a silver lining yet, would be that we're having these discussions a lot more than we did 3 months ago. And when people at least start talking about things, there's a possibility of change. I know over the first 2 months at Lake City, we were incredibly energetic about what we could do to try and address some of the issues that our clients were facing just on a day-to-day basis. And I know myself personally, I was really excited about the fact that this might be an opportunity to start making some really serious change to the way that we support not just folks with mental health, but all folks that are living on the margins and folks with barriers to just being well. I still have some hope for that. I think I am, in all honesty, a little bit tired we've worked incredibly hard over the last 4 months.
I bet.
Just trying to take a deep breath right now to prepare for what might be coming over the next 10 months. Like, we really don't know what this is like. So
it's hard on you guys too, frontline people.
It's hard on everybody. And I have a job and a house to go home to, and I have a yard that I've been able to spend lots of time in. I'm not complaining. I've got it pretty good. Being tired is really not that big a deal. I think all I'm reflecting on is that this is a long haul, and we need to be prepared. The other piece of it is mental health does certainly fluctuate with seasons, and we're fortunate that we've entered, this sort of came about as daylight was becoming more prevalent, and it's a little scary to think about in 6 to 8 months time when winter starts to come in and the second wave coming through at that point. I guess I'm sort of fear mongering a bit, and I'm not intending to do that, but just those are the things that I think about on a day-to-day basis. Just what can we do to make sure that we're well prepared, that if a second wave of this comes, or we don't know how this is going to evolve. We're just starting to see the preliminary impacts on our economy. This is going to be pretty long term, so I think, unfortunately, we were likely going to see an increase in the community of folks living with mental health issues. And with services already lacking, it's going to be tough. But I will say that we've got capacity at Lake City for those of you in HRM, and I don't mean that to be sort of a shameless plug. It's just we are there to help, and we're an employment organization with most of the activities that we relate or that we offer tying back to folks eventually moving into employment. But I guess what I'll stress is that we don't take a quick approach to it. We definitely take our time with folks. And early on, you'd asked a question that I didn't get a chance to chime in on.
Sure.
Just around how to support someone that gets a job, loses a job, gets a job, loses a job.
Yes, please.
I mean, the short answer of it is you just keep helping them. There's no magic pill to make that go away. Like, I mean, the issues could be with employers. The issues maybe like the person needs to learn some coping skills or things like that. I mean, Lake City itself is, I mean, that's what we're there to do. I mean, we've been supporting folks with mental illness since the mid 80s and on their journey to employment. And we'll continue to do that, hopefully long into the future. And we've always taken an approach that is, you know, person first. So we're working with the person and letting them guide us through the process.
Excellent.
And we're fortunate enough to have the ability to spend time with folks. And I think, I mean,
that makes a difference.
For a lot of our clients, I think sometimes function a bit like a 211. There's a lot of the navigation stuff that you're been speaking about, Angie, and I'm like, I'm going to start telling our employment counselors to refer people to 211. But I think the thing that we struggle with the most is that, like housing being a big example, it's really hard to refer someone someplace that you know the answer is not going to be there. And the staff that we have at Lake City are quite competent in navigating the health landscape and navigating the housing landscape, despite the fact that their title would be an employment counselor. Those are all part and parcel to someone actually being able to even think about a job. And it's really tough to say to someone like, oh, well, we're going to refer you to 811, and knowing that support that they really need is 6 months out is actually like not even, that's really optimistic, I think.
Especially now.
Yeah.
Angie,
but I
do you have
think,
anything? Sorry.
can I just add one last thing? I think given that that's a tough situation, I think those peer groups, getting involved in a community, building a community around you if you don't have one. There's some great drop-in social clubs. I mean, Lake City itself is, our day-to-day is a bit of a social club, our typical day-to-day. And I think it's probably one of the biggest determinants of someone's maintenance of decent mental health. They may not be, things might not be perfect, but I think when you've got that community around you, it really helps build resiliency within individuals to have a support network. And that's not just for mental health, that's across the board. So
sure.
I think Liam touched on this, and I'm somewhat of an optimist. So I think we do need to find the silver linings. But I think we had some important discussions and important things were said out loud, that let's not just close our ears to those things. Lots of things, like if you look at sort of what our provincial leaders have said, like two things that really stand out for me from Premier McNeil is the conversation he had, and he was very forthcoming about why he wasn't going to close the liquor stores. That it's addiction is a reality. Family violence caused by addiction is a reality in this province. And he really just said that, at a press conference. He just said, there are Nova Scotians who their health, is impacted by whether or not those, that store is open or closed. And that was a conversation, and he said it out loud. And I think that is something, there's something really brave and admirable about a premier saying out loud that we have addiction issues in this, addiction and family violence issues in this province. I think the other thing that recently just happened that was certainly, I was really proud to see was, when the province first came out talking about restrictions, and we talked about a family, and then sort of inside of 24 hours, we realized that family looks different for everybody. So certainly as we talk about sort of addiction, mental health, and all of these things, sometimes we talked about triggers. Not everybody has an ideal family and a safe family. So when we listen to the premier, we listen to our provincial leaders sort of saying what family looks like for you, who do you want to bubble with, who makes you feel safe and secure. I think they're little doors that opened. Seeing Mayor Savage, Mayor Clark, seeing these mayors of our two major municipalities talking out loud about Black Lives Matter. I think that's important. And I know there's small steps, but I think they were. I think they sent some big signals that we are prepared as a province to have some difficult conversations, and let's have them in the light of day, and let's acknowledge that addiction and crisis and mental health are real issues that Nova Scotians are facing, and family looks different for everybody, and safety looks different for everybody, and I'm just hoping that sort of as you, Anne, with a public voice, and you, Liam, as a like let's not let up on those conversations, because they're important, and the door has been maybe not kicked open but creaked open. So those are important days for me.
What's that? I'm sorry, Angie.
Those were important days for me. I really when those 2 days.
My sister. Sorry, I'm going to continue for a minute. My sister lives in New Zealand. And the prime minister there in 8 days banned assault weapons and assault weapons and RN-14s or something within 8 days. And then she just put the first budget of its kind in the world. She did a mindfulness budget, which she didn't put the money in the military. She put it in the youth, because they're in dire straits of need for resources. So it was $1.3 billion mindfulness budget. Right now, we're deciding whether to spend $500,000 on an armored vehicle for the police, and we're crying.
I think they stopped that, did they not?
Did they? I don't know.
I think
I haven't had an update.
I believe it went before council there like a week ago.
Okay, and they turned it down, so the money's going to go.
They did turn that around, which is
okay. Well, that's good news.
Good move, yeah.
My question is, if you were the prime minister and you could do a mindfulness budget, what would you do, Angie?
No, I'm going to spend the money first. I think you touched on it a little bit, and when it comes to youth and empowering our youth, and how do we engage them in a system that they feel pretty left out of, and so I think I would look at that and target that, and that money, is that money spent in schools? Is it after school programs? Is it all of is it any of those things? I think the devil's often in the details, but I would look at strengthening. I would look at ways that we can strengthen communities and the family, and I mean family in the loosest sense of the word. Like, as I said, whoever I call so many people my aunts. They're just women that mean in the world to me. How do we look at strengthening our communities and really and helping people, sort of meeting them where they are. I think one of the things that often upsets me, I'll probably show a little bit of my political colors here, is that I'm not opposed to hunting. I'm not opposed to ATVs. These types of things are, I can say firsthand. I'm from the South Shore originally. My mom and family own a fishing and a tackle and hunting store. The day when sport fishing came back on board, that meant a lot to a lot of families where I'm from. It was something they could. That for them was returning to a sense of normalcy. Here in Metro, when the mall opened for some, that was returning to a sense of normalcy. What I really would strive to do is we look at spending wellness money is really removing the stigma of where that money should go. At the end of the day, if you're not hurting anybody and you find joy in, if you find joy on an ATV, how can we do that safely? If you find joy in fishing, how can we do that safely? And if if you find joy in in a metro park, then how do we do that? I really think that we need to start having conversations that sort of strip the stigma of what brings people true joy. And I think we kind of saw that as the restrictions eased up. Yeah, I was also reading Linda's note there, but
yeah, we have a prime minister who's very understanding about mental health issues. His mother suffers with mental health condition, bipolar. She may have some pressure for more funding and programs could work. That's Linda Margaret Trudeau.
Cam H has been out of Toronto, has been advocating pretty strongly for some shifting of funding towards some crisis, or addressing the issues around crisis. Yeah, the Prime Minister question, I would never take that job.
No, that's okay. Pass.
Well, no, not pass. I would put more money into mental health. Like, I mean, that's the world that I work in. It's
exactly.
I mean, there's reasons that I got into it, because there's lots of folks in my family that have experienced significant issues from it. It drove me towards that, I think. And I think since I've worked in this world for almost 20 years, it's yeah, the issues are there, and we do need to address them, and they're going to get bigger too. In terms of other funding and stuff like that, I don't know enough about how the government works to like give you an educated answer on where I would allocate funding. I mean, I think we could probably, I mean, for me, like the big things are like education and health. If you've got a well-informed population that's taken care of, generally speaking, I think the population will take care of itself. And I think we do generally do a pretty good job of that in Canada. We're fortunate in Canada to have what we have.
That. Yeah,
but
safety net.
The realities of it is that it's not equitably distributed across the board. So fixing that. So and that's not an easy thing to fix either.
No, it's not.
I mean, we talked about the African Nova Scotian communities. There's communities like that all across Canada, and then the Indigenous folks that have been forgotten about for years and years. For centuries. Those are inequities that, I think we do need to do a better job of trying to address. So if I had the purse strings, I guess those are the ones I would open up. And in all honesty, I think I would think long and hard about who I gave the money to. And I see a lot of great work happening in frontline organizations like Lake City. I'm really proud of the work that we do, and I know we make a tremendous impact for the budget that we work within. Not to go like in a private approach by any means, but I think like thinking creatively about how do we get services where they need to be, and not just dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into bureaucracies that know how to eat money like nobody's business. And getting it into frontline supports. And I know there are some great organizations all across the country, and then some really wonderful government programs. So like 2-on-1 being a great example. We've done lots of work with 2-on-1 on a program that we launched at Lake City. That's been, it has been not running for the last couple of months, but and it's just been a fabulous resource for us, and just keep continuing to build on that. I love that navigation piece. I think is really critical. And I think maybe even like a 2-on-1 specific to mental health would be appropriate, to be honest, because it's an entirely it's a wild system. Like
it is.
It's not an easy one to navigate.
No, that's for sure. Thank you, Liam. I have a question. If there are people obviously watching the show tonight, and Angie, I'm going to go with Liam first, then Angie, just to switch it up. Liam and then Angie. if you could say something to anybody out there right now that is struggling, that needs a resource, they don't know if they have the ability to get out of bed even, and they're really in a desperate situation, if they're listening tonight and you could say something that would resonate with them, Liam, what would you say?
I would say that we care about you, and that there are people out there that care about you. And um, I think the first step might seem really difficult, but if you can take that first step, there's help out there. And the important thing is just reaching out for that help. And once you take that step, some of the things that might be difficult for you right now might be a little bit easier with some support.
Excellent. Thank you so much. You're up.
Yeah, our tagline, not to pitch a comms thing at you, but our tagline is "Help starts here," and I think that's really important. We used to say when you don't know where to turn, which really kind of felt a little negative, but help starts here. I think for anyone who is struggling, you don't have to know why you're struggling. You don't even have to know what you need. You don't have to have any answers. You just have to know you need help. And calling 211, and there's no shame in reaching out. There's no shame in not being able to, name or understand even, how we get here. Life can be challenging and unpredictable. So I would say, pick up the phone and call 211, and if that's, and if we need to make another call, if we do need to make an emergency call, well, we'll walk you through that too. But let's, if you need some help, we're here.
I feel like that you really mean what you say. That's awesome, because a lot of people, the first step is the hardest, The other thing I was wanting to talk about is that we need to develop a timely response to the crisis in healthcare. Like it's not going away. It's not getting better. I don't want to be negative, but there needs to be some kind of immediate urgency. You can't, you can't keep doing feasibility studies and talking about it. For instance, I used to work for Bell. And I was in psychosis. I was off my medication because I couldn't afford it. It was $200 a month. So in January of last year, I went to Bell and I thought I could work. Oh, yeah, I'm Superwoman. I can work. No, not me. I couldn't. I did the test. I failed it. And then I did it again 4 times and I passed it. And they said, well, you got to retest. And I said, well, can't you accommodate me? You guys do, Bell, let's talk. And they said, no, we don't know how to accommodate somebody with bipolar, Miss Edwards. I said, excuse me? You guys have this Bell Let's Talk and you get all this money in and you don't know how to accommodate me. I said, well, what if I went to my psychiatrist and I asked her to devise a plan for accommodation so that I could keep the job? And they said, okay. So I sat down with my psychiatrist for 2.5 hours. We figured it out. The best way for me to learn, because of my 2 mental illnesses, was to role play. But they didn't want to do that. They had the screen with the manager in Moncton reading the questions, and I would answer them, and then he would put them in the computer. And I missed passing the test by two points. And they said, well, we're not going to bother with you. You're mentally ill. We don't know how to accommodate you. And they fired me. How do you respond to somebody that's gone through, I would say, just years of being discriminated? Because once it's disclosed, then no, you don't fit in. Or like at the Chronicle Herald, no, you don't fit in, and you're mentally ill, and you just don't. And when you're mentally ill and you hear this and somebody's saying to you, you don't fit in. Well, why don't I fit in? I don't understand. Like, just because I'm mentally ill, just that doesn't mean that I can't do what you need me to do. And well, it doesn't work out. How do you help or address this? Because it's systemic.
I know at Lake City, the I took over at Lake City about 3 years ago, and one of the things that we've done is, prioritizing bringing. Our staff team is trying to make our staff team representative of the clients that we support. And within our current staff team, I don't know what it's been a little while since I've actually done a calculation, but at one point I think it was 55% of our staff team were folks that had an identified mental illness. And yeah, it's not always easy to accommodate things, and it does create, it's there. It
It's
makes things a little bit more
uncomfortable.
complicated,
Yeah.
or uncomfortable. Yeah, those are good things, but I think
Mm.
the reality of it is that we need to do it, because we're not talking about like this is across the board, like there's a lot of people out there that need this accommodation. There's a huge demographic of folks that are
Yes.
being overlooked for jobs or being fired from jobs. I guess one thing I would say would be like knowing your rights, and like we provide workshops on that, is incredibly important, so that you can protect yourself if you get into a situation like that. And one of our sort of strategic pillars is just trying to change the way that workplaces think about
Yes.
illness. There's lots of literature out there that that actually speaks to like it being advantageous to bring folks with barriers to employment into your workplace, because lots of examples like folks, there's a lot better retention rates.
Happier.
That's it. There may be barriers that are the first things that everybody like that are so easy to identify because they're stereotypes
Mm.
around for a really long time. But there's another story there as well. Prior to start like working with Lake City, I used to work in the autism world in Montreal, and there was some really great work done in that sector around sort of changing the narrative of this sort of burden of bringing someone with autism into the workplace to let's look at this in a different way. And when you look at it in a different way, you've got, there's stereotypes built into it, but in that world, they did a really great job of advocating for that group of people,
Mm.
to market them to businesses out there. There was an organization we did a lot of work with, Special Eastern, which was a Danish company that I don't know how many employees they have now, but in the first operation they launched, they had 60 folks that were employed in IT jobs, making decent money, and I think their biggest client was IBM, and that's now branched out across the world. It would be really cool to see something like that happen with mental health. I know we've talked about it at
Yes, it
Lake City.
would. Yes, it would.
Yeah, and I don't want to quote anything from it because I can't recall any quotes from it, but I read an article about just tying bipolar disorder to a lot of the best leaders that the world has ever seen. Again, like not a fact-checked article by any means. I think I probably read it on like Facebook or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the world is diverse, and workplaces need to reflect that diversity. Mental health.
Now,
Yeah,
not like
absolutely.
not like for instance for 2030 they're going to make it accessible for everybody in Nova Scotia with ramps and the proper building codes and things like that. Well, that's 10 years away. What happens to hello?
I said it's a long
That's 10
time.
years
Yeah.
away. And, what happens to my friend that's in a wheelchair and wants to go to the beach and wanted to go for the beach for years and can't go? Like, accessibility is definitely another issue
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
itself.
Yeah.
You know?
And I hate to jump off, but I actually only planned to be on for 10 minutes. You kept me for an hour
Oh my
extra.
gosh, I'm so sorry.
But I'm going camping tomorrow, and
Oh, where are you going?
going down to a place I think it's called the Islands. It's just down in Shelburne.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
and I haven't packed yet. So
Okay. Well,
been
I
a,
really appreciate your time.
it's been a great discussion. Thanks for the questions. Nice to meet you,
Yeah.
Angie.
You
And
too.
there's lots of work to do, but discussions like this help get us there. So thank you guys.
Well, no, thank you. God bless.
All right, take care.
Angie, I just have one quick question and I'll let you go to the bar. No, I'm just kidding. The question is, I want to get back to the high levels of stress, anxiety, panic attacks, depression that people of color face because of their either their economic situation or their health situation or not having food, and that's based on years of racism. How can we develop in a timely response a way to deal with youth that are in crisis in our communities?
I think you make a I think you touched on this before, but I think it is getting the supports and getting, you know, the microphones, the megaphones, whatever it needs to be in front of the people who are on the ground, dealing with this issue. You know, I've been working in, you know, a political life for a long time, and now I'm here at 211. I think oftentimes, you know, we have a bird's eye view on things. So it's been really great for me to be here at 211 and to really hear from the service providers right on the ground. So, you know, certainly we should not be having any discussions about any discussions about the experiences of African Nova Scotians, of Black Nova Scotians.
That's right.
Without having, you know, African Nova Scotians and Black Nova Scotians at the table, at the head of, in my opinion, you know, and I think too, and I think what is really important for these conversations is to be ready to hear that there will be failures there, you know, and I think if you look at you know, if you look at even, let's look at the Home for Colored Children, for instance. You know, we took a generation to apologize for that, but the province did. You know, there are steps to be made. So as we have these conversations, and you know, this is you know, I'm just a girl from the South Shore, but I often you know, when we know better, we do better. Let's admit that we all have things that we need to learn or relearn. So I think that's really important. And to just keep these conversations going, but conversations need to lead to action, and they do need to lead to dollars. You know, there are we need to be looking at ways that we can support programs and support programs on the ground that actually, you know, this is what one of our partners, one of our major partners is the United Ways of Nova Scotia. They really are supportive of 211s across the country. They are a national partner. You know, I look at programs that, you know, that United Way funds, and they have you know, they need to see tangible results, real results on the ground, and I think that's really important.
Awesome.
To start seeing some real actions. So I think those are just little steps that we can make, and certainly have our ears open, but have, you know, ready to hit the ground on those programs that we need to fund and we need to support.
Well, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. And once again, you know, there were many a time when I called you guys and they said, well, we got to go. And I said, well, can you talk for a few more minutes? And they were just amazing when I was in need of just, you know, like somebody just to say, you know, you'll be okay. It'll be all right.
Yeah. You know? And I mean, certainly, like I said, I'm hoping that for all of us, you know, COVID has taught us that, you know, there are lots of people who do face financial challenges and employment challenges every day. And I think, you know, maybe across the country, we all got a little taste of what that's, you know, what that is like, and what, you know, that stress is involved. We will just be a little bit more compassionate and realize that, and I wish Liam were still on. There is great dignity of work, you know, and we should help people, not just to become self-sufficient, but I think we all are looking for purpose and for drive, and I think that there is great dignity in that, and we all certainly have something to contribute.
I agree. Amen. Well, I guess we're gonna probably close off tonight, and the reason why I wanted to do this show in the very beginning was that I wanted to give. I wanted to give back. If you can't feed one, if you can't feed 100, feed one. If you can't, that's Mother Teresa. If you can't be kind, be kinder.
Yeah.
And it resonates with me when when I was homeless. I mean, she was poor. She was really, really poor, but she still help people. She still, give. And I feel if you give, the blessings will come back to you. And I just thank you so much for being a blessing tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anne. It was great to meet you.
You too.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. I guess we're still live.